I'm Noah, a network security student in Chicago. It might sound a little strange, but besides lines of code and algorithms, I have another interest: exploring the mysteries hidden deep within the internet, especially the deep web forums. In those places, people share all sorts of bizarre things, from crazy conspiracy theories to images and coordinates of locations that ordinary people would never dare to set foot in. One forum I frequented had a rather chilling name: Places You Shouldn't Go. Most of the posts were fictional stories or old, unidentified photos. But sometimes, you'd come across a piece of information that would make your hair stand on end. One night, a user with the nickname 001 sent me a private message. The account was newly created and had no prior activity. The message contained only a set of coordinates and a single line of text: "Maybe you'll like this place." The coordinates led to an old, dilapidated chemical factory on the outskirts of Gary, Indiana. Gary is a city known for its decline and abandoned industrial areas. So an old chemical factory wasn't exactly surprising. But what piqued my curiosity was the mystery of the message sender and the name of the forum. I told my group of friends, Liam, Sarah, and Chris, about the coordinates. Liam, a guy who loved a good adventure, was immediately enthusiastic. Sarah, although a little apprehensive, was also intrigued by the mystery. Only Chris was skeptical, but we eventually managed to convince him to come along. That weekend, we drove to Gary. The chemical factory loomed before us like a giant skeleton of concrete and steel, rusted and decaying. The shattered windows looked like empty, dark eye sockets staring out at the world. The rusted iron gate had collapsed, revealing a wide yard overgrown with weeds and littered with rusty barrels. The pungent smell of chemicals hit us immediately, making us feel uneasy. We cautiously made our way inside. What surprised us was that the factory still had power. Fluorescent lights flickered weakly on the ceiling, creating shifting areas of light and shadow that only added to the creepiness. The surveillance camera system seemed to be still functioning, the lifeless electronic eyes slowly panning as if tracking our every move. "Weird," Liam muttered, shining his flashlight around. "Someone's still paying the electricity bill for this place." We split up to explore different areas of the factory. Long, dark corridors, rooms filled with rusting machinery, and pipes snaking like spiderwebs. The air was heavy with the smell of chemicals and dust. The deeper we went inside, the more we felt an unseen presence watching us. Every small noise, every fleeting shadow made us jump. It felt like someone was lurking in the darkness, observing our every move. As night fell, we decided to set up camp in a relatively clean office on the second floor. We built a small campfire with some scrap wood we found and ate dinner in silence, each of us carrying an indescribable sense of unease. That night, a terrifying incident occurred. Chris, who was sleeping in a corner of the room, vanished. We woke up the next morning and he was gone. The windows were still closed and there were no signs of forced entry on the door. We called his name, searched everywhere in the factory, but there was no result. Chris had seemingly vanished into thin air. Fear gripped us. We decided to leave the factory immediately. When we got back to Chicago, I rushed to open the deep web forum again. I searched for the account 001, but it was nowhere to be found. The account seemed to have never existed. A heavy premonition weighed on my heart. I continued browse the forum, and then I saw a new post. The title wasn't anything special, just a random string of numbers. But when I clicked on it, I froze. The post contained a photo. It was a picture of our group, taken from a high angle, probably from one of the surveillance cameras in the factory. The photo was taken the night before, just before Chris disappeared. Below the photo was a short, chilling caption: "The next gift is ready." My blood ran cold. I stared at the photo, at Chris's smiling face, the friend who had now vanished without a trace. I didn't know who had posted this picture and what the next gift was. But I knew we had stumbled upon something very dangerous. Something that was watching us and perhaps waiting for us in the dark. Since then, I've never dared to go near those deep web forums again. I always feel like someone is watching me, and every time night falls. I remember the old, dilapidated chemical factory in Gary, Indiana, and the friend who disappeared without a trace. I learned a valuable lesson. There are places where curiosity can lead you to the most terrifying abysses. I still remember the night Freya called me as if it were yesterday. Her voice was full of excitement, tinged with a shiver from the cold. "Claudia, can you believe it? Lewis and I are in Iceland." We drove all the way north and set up camp in the middle of this wild, snowy landscape to hunt for the northern lights. The sky here, it's like a dream. Lewis, her boyfriend, a Frenchman with a warm smile and eyes that always held a spark of curiosity, also sent me a few messages, praising the majestic and breathtakingly silent beauty of the land. They sent me stunning photos, ribbons of green, purple, and pink light dancing across the inky night sky. Snow-capped mountains standing silent under the moonlight. I wished I could have been there with them. But then, about a week later, I received a strange text message from Freya. It was just one line: "Claudia, something's not right." My heart sank. I called her back immediately. Freya's voice had lost its initial excitement, replaced by worry and exhaustion. Last night, Lewis and I saw some very strange things. She told me that in the middle of the freezing night, under a clear sky illuminated by the aurora borealis, they had discovered some unusually stacked stones. They weren't like natural rock formations eroded by wind or shaped by ice, Claudia. They were deliberately piled on top of each other, forming these weird structures, like small, sharp towers rising out of the white snow. Lewis, with his practical nature, initially thought it was just a trick of the light and shadows. But Freya, with her keen intuition, felt that something was off. And then, amidst the faint whistling of the wind, they heard a strange sound. It was the sound of a child's lullaby, very soft, very sad, echoing in the silent air. Around them, there was no sign of life, only snow and rock and their small tent. We checked all around, Claudia. There was no one there. But the lullaby kept going, like a song carried on the wind from a place very far away, very old. I tried to reassure her, saying that perhaps it was just a hallucination caused by the harsh weather and isolation. But Freya's voice continued to tremble. "But that's not all," she continued, her voice dropping as if she were afraid someone might overhear. "Since the third night here, every morning when Lewis wakes up, he has these strange scratches on his back. They're not deep, just long, slightly red marks, but there are so many of them. As if someone with sharp fingernails had been raking them across his skin. He doesn't remember anything happening during the night. He sleeps very soundly." I shuddered. Unexplained injuries always conjure the most terrifying images in my mind. "And what about you, Freya?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Me?" She hesitated. "I keep dreaming about a woman. A woman wearing a pure white wedding dress, floating in the snow. Her face is very pale, almost translucent, and her eyes are wide open, staring straight at me with a sad, pleading look." Freya said she had seen the woman before in an old photograph that Lewis had found in Reykjavik. It was a faded black and white picture of a small village buried under a thick layer of snow almost a century ago. Lewis had shown her the photo because the vintage wedding dress was so beautiful. That village, according to what I read, it's somewhere up north. Not far from where we're camping, Freya said, her voice filled with unease. "I have this strange feeling, Claudia. It's like the woman in my dream is trying to tell me something. Or maybe, warn me about something." I didn't know what to advise Freya. These strange coincidences, the child's lullaby in the wind, the mysterious scratches, and the haunting dream of the dead woman, all created a chilling atmosphere that made me worry about their safety. "Freya, maybe you should leave there," I urged her. "This doesn't sound right at all." "I know," she sighed, "but Lewis wants to stay one more night. He says maybe we'll see the northern lights as beautifully as the first night. As for me, I don't know anymore. I feel very uneasy, but at the same time, I'm curious to know what's going on." That was the last time I spoke to Freya. The next day I called her, but her phone had no signal. I called Lewis, but his phone also didn't connect. I sent text messages, emails, but there was no response. The following days passed in anxiety and uncertainty. I tried to find information about the buried village, about ghost stories in the snowy north of Iceland. I found a few local legends about a young woman who had died in a blizzard right before her wedding day, and her spirit still wandered the area, searching for her lost love. People said that sometimes on full moon nights, you could hear her sad lullaby carried on the wind. I don't know what happened to Freya and Lewis. Maybe they had an accident on the road. Maybe they got lost in the harsh wilderness. Or maybe they encountered something much more terrifying. A secret buried deep beneath the eternal ice, guarded by the strangely stacked stones and the heartbreaking lullaby in the night. Every time I see photos of the northern lights now, I no longer feel their ethereal beauty. Instead, I remember Freya's worried voice, the mysterious scratches on Lewis's back, and the image of the woman in the wedding dress floating in the white snow. Their story has become a silent haunting in my mind, a reminder that sometimes the wild beauty of nature can also conceal the coldest and most terrifying secrets. We, Elias, Matteo, and I, Claudia, shared a peculiar and perhaps insane passion, exploring ruins, abandoned structures where time and oblivion had cast a veil of ethereal dust. Elias, with his ever-present old camera, always yearned to capture the eerie beauty of decay. Matteo, the most rational of our group, was always the one researching the history and architecture of these places. As for me, I was drawn to the stories hidden behind crumbling walls, the whispering echoes of the past. One night, while scrolling through Reddit in our cramped Madrid apartment, Elias stumbled upon a strange post in a little-known subreddit. The title was simply, "Forgotten Monastery in Sierra de Gredos." The accompanying photo was blurry and shaky, seemingly taken hastily in the dark. Revealing only a fragment of gloomy Gothic architecture, its pointed stone arches reaching up into the inky night sky. The description was even more vague, just a few lines about strange Latin chants echoing from nowhere and a bone-chilling cold even in the middle of summer. "Check this out," Elias said excitedly, pushing his laptop towards us. "Looks like we found our next destination." Matteo frowned at the photo. "Sierra de Gredos? I've never heard of any abandoned monastery there. Historical maps don't even mention it." "That's what makes it interesting," I replied, an inexplicable thrill surging through me. "A buried secret. We have to go." And so it was that, after only a few days of preparation, we found ourselves at the foot of the Sierra de Gredos mountain range. The air here was eerily cold and still. Towering pine trees stood motionless like ghostly sentinels guarding an ancient secret. We followed a rough, winding trail, Elias's old Jeep rattling constantly. After hours of driving, finally, amidst the mist-shrouded peaks, we saw it. The ancient monastery emerged like a colossal skeleton of ash-gray stone, silhouetted against the overcast sky. As we drew closer, the desolation became more apparent. Moss-covered stone walls were stained and streaked, and shattered windows resembled empty, dark eye sockets staring into our souls. The rusted iron gate lay collapsed on the ground, revealing a wide courtyard overgrown with weeds and scattered with broken flagstones. The smell of damp earth, cold stone, and a strange, faint scent, like incense mixed with dried blood, assaulted our nostrils, sending a shiver down my spine. We cautiously stepped inside. Weak light filtering through the broken windows cast eerie patterns on the dust-laden floor. Our footsteps echoed in the suffocating silence, like anxious heartbeats counting down time. The vast rooms were empty, the frescoes on the walls faded and peeling, leaving behind only grotesque, frightening shapes. Matteo carefully examined what remained. This architecture dates back to at least the 15th century, probably a Benedictine monastery. Elias was engrossed in taking photos, a morbid fascination gleaming in his eyes. Look at these carvings. They're so strange. I've never seen symbols like this before. He pointed to a drawing on a stone column, a circle enclosing a weeping eye. As we explored a large chamber which might have once been the church, I suddenly felt a cold draft on the back of my neck. Even though there were no windows or openings nearby, an indescribable unease washed over me. I had the feeling that someone was watching us, even though there was no one there. "Did you guys hear anything?" I asked softly, my voice trembling slightly. Matteo and Elias stopped and listened. At first, there was only the faint whistling of the wind outside, but then, from deep within the monastery, we heard a strange sound. It was a series of low, monotonous syllables like Latin chanting. The sound was faint, echoing from the darkness, but enough to make the hairs on the back of our necks stand on end. "What was that?" Matteo whispered, his face pale. Elias swallowed hard. "No way. This monastery has been abandoned for centuries." We followed the sound, venturing deeper into the monastery. The chanting grew louder with each step, as if it were luring us into an invisible trap. We reached a dark, damp corridor where the strange scent from before was even stronger. At the end of the corridor, we saw a rotting wooden door, almost completely decayed. Matteo tried to push the door open, but it was jammed. Elias and I helped, and finally, with a horrifying creak, the door swung open, revealing a steep stone staircase leading down into absolute darkness. "Not on the map," Matteo murmured, his eyes filled with suspicion. "There's no mention of this basement in any historical records." Despite the fear gnawing at our insides, curiosity and the desire to explore won out. Elias switched on his flashlight, its weak beam barely illuminating the dust and cobweb-covered steps. We cautiously descended, each step heavy with apprehension. The deeper we went, the colder and more suffocating the air became. The smell of dampness and dried blood grew stronger, making me feel nauseous. The chanting continued, now clearer and more terrifying. I could make out ancient Latin words, prayers that sounded more like curses. Suddenly, Elias stopped, his flashlight beam shaking as it illuminated a long stain on the steps. It was dried blood, turned dark brown, but still distinctly shaped. The stain stretched downwards as if guiding us. "This," Elias stammered, his voice hoarse. We continued down, and the bloodstains became more frequent, scattered on the steps and the damp stone walls. We also began to see strange symbols carved into the walls, distorted, frightening figures, circles with incomprehensible characters inside. I felt a primal terror rising within me, a sense that we were trespassing in a place not meant for the living. When we reached the bottom of the stairs, we stepped into a vast underground chamber. The space was pitch black, with only Elias's weak flashlight beam able to pierce the darkness. The chanting now enveloped us, echoing from every corner, like a ghostly choir welcoming intruders. I swept the flashlight around, trying to see more clearly. The damp stone walls were seeping water, and the floor was littered with white bone fragments and strange objects I couldn't identify. In the center of the chamber, I saw an old stone altar, upon which lay a thick leather-bound book. Its pages yellowed and filled with ancient script. And then we felt it. A bone-chilling coldness spread through our bodies. An invisible gaze was fixed upon us from the darkness. I could clearly sense the presence of someone, or something, that was here, watching our every move. "We should get out of here," Matteo whispered, his voice urgent. Right now. I completely agreed. The unease within me had reached its peak. I wanted to turn and run, but my feet seemed rooted to the ground. Elias, though his face was also pale, tried to remain calm. He shone his flashlight towards a dark corner of the chamber, and then he froze, a choked cry escaping his throat. "What is it?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. Elias said nothing, just trembling as he pointed towards the dark corner. I directed my flashlight in the direction of his hand, and what I saw made my blood run cold. In that dark corner, I saw a tall, gaunt figure standing silently. The figure was wearing a long black robe, its hood pulled up, obscuring its face, revealing only a pale, featureless expanse where eyes, nose, and mouth should have been, except for a wide, gaping maw filled with sharp, shark-like teeth. A horrifying scream tore through the silent air of the chamber. It was my scream. The figure slowly turned its head towards us, and I felt a gust of cold, fetid air wash over my face. The chanting suddenly grew louder, more intense, as if all of hell was roaring. We turned and fled, desperately trying to escape that cursed chamber. But the space seemed distorted, the corridors and staircases twisting and turning like an endless maze. We ran and ran, but we couldn't seem to find our way out. The feeling of being lost in a spiraling space gradually made us lose our sense of direction and our belief in reality. I don't know how long we ran. Time seemed to have stopped. I only remember the gasping breaths, the frantic footsteps on the cold stone floor, and the demonic chanting that continued to pursue us. Finally, somehow, we found our way back to the staircase. We scrambled up the steps, not daring to look back, terrified that the horrifying figure was still following us. When we reached the rotting wooden door, we were almost completely exhausted. We pushed the door open with all our might, and it swung open, revealing the dark corridor of the monastery. We burst outside, gasping for breath in the cold but pure night air. We ran and ran until we couldn't run anymore. We stopped in a safe place, looking back at the ancient monastery looming in the darkness, like a sleeping monster. Since that night, our lives have been forever changed. Mateo became quiet and withdrawn. Elias never wanted to photograph abandoned places again. As for me, I am still haunted by the terrifying images in that underground chamber, by the pale, eyeless face, by the demonic chanting. Sometimes on quiet, late nights, I still hear the chanting echoing from nowhere. And I know that something was awakened in the Sierra de Gritos, and it is still watching us, waiting for the right moment to drag us back into the darkness.